Well, this late morning, I should say.
Good morning.
I know
Perfect time.
Morning.
everybody's been up for 4 or 5 hours. We should probably do this at 6. Since you all are waiting for this.
No, it takes a little time for the blood to flow.
Oh, it's flowing. It's flowing. Oh, okay. Uh-oh. Hold on. I got to go get my bottle of water. Hold on.
Wonderful.
All right. All right. My water. All right. It's 11 o'clock. Are we ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say thank you all for attending our virtual, and hopefully everybody is learning to live with this whole new virtual lifestyle. I know you judges love it, so that's a good thing. I just want to start giving everybody kind of a quick update. I got to put my glasses on a little bit. Just want to give about what SPLOS and what SPLOS has been doing. Our library systems are being updated, and our library systems are really progressing well. We really want to get folks and our children using these libraries. They have some fabulous programs involved in it, and we want to begin to get folks utilizing that. We're replacing 83 county service vehicles. 53 of them are funded by SPLOST. So we're going to be able to get a lot of good work done. I know a lot of our department directors are loving that. CCTV has been remodeled and is implementing a mini podcast studio. So that is good things. 227 public safety vehicles are being replaced. That's including the sheriff, fire, and PD. So our county is moving along well and looking good in servicing our citizens a little bit quicker. The Flint River Community Center, even though it's outside District 4, is over 97% complete. They're taking tours. It is a beautiful facility. So we want you all to go over and take a look at that. The VIP complex, right now we're going through the design phase and we're accepting bids for architects for that to go through that design. So we're going to move that forward as well. That's your SPLOST dollars at work. International Park, we're about 50% complete with that. I know it's Troy Hodge or Troy Stubbs is going to speak to that a little later. We're encountering a few issues because of COVID, but we want you all to know what those issues are so you're not in limbo about the status of that. And our Battle Creek widening project, that's about 99% complete. That's over there on Valley Hill Road to Valley Hill to South Lake Parkway. So that's about 99% complete in the widening project of that. And our Valley Hill Bridge replacement that's going over the Flint River. I know you all that travel Valley Hill see that renovation going on, and that right now is just a little over 10%. We're running into some utility line problems over there, but we're going to address them as well. So that's what we have as far as SPLOST. We are getting some things done in this county. We want to make sure we let you all know what's going on, not just the good, but even some of the issues that we are encountering. But next, I want to bring up, who is it next? Parks and Rec, and begin to let them tell a little bit about what's going on. So Troy, you are here.
Hey, yes, sir. Commissioner, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Talk to us about all the stuff you're doing with Parks and Recs.
With Parks and Recreation busy. We finished a few construction projects. As you guys may know, the District 4 Recreation Center, better yet known as the Lakes 5E Recreation Center, is open, fully functional, and ready for you guys to attend. We have indoor swimming, state-of-the-art fitness equipment. The water park is under construction and it's going to be ready for you guys. You're shooting
You're breaking up a little, Troy. Troy?
Hear me now?
Yeah, you were cut out for it. Was he cut out on everyone? I just want to make sure it wasn't just me.
Yes, it was getting a little choppy.
Okay, yeah, you're getting a little choppy, Troy. You can go back maybe to the facility.
How about now, Commissioner?
It might be a little better. You all that can hear him a little better, give me some hands or something. You can hear him better.
Yeah,
All right.
because I can't see you guys. Sorry.
That's all right.
So yes, we're under construction with the water park, the VIP complex, which is the amphitheater. The amphitheater is going to be bigger and better than ever. International Park in itself will be totally different, and we look forward to all the renovations, being done in the month of August, September range, depending on weather, depending on COVID, of course. We have finished the dog parks. We've got 2 dog parks. Dog parks are well attended. Our walking trails are up and running and busier than ever. I was on the trails last night, and the trails were packed, even with people with flashlights. So that's people are utilizing the trails, and that's what we would like. Anything else, Commissioner, that I'm missing?
Tell them a little bit about, we've got some delays going over there, I guess, with ordering products because of COVID, which is going to delay us just a little bit. Just let folks know that's about COVID and what's going on with that.
Yeah, with the water park you're speaking of, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the problem is when we the old Nassau building, which was where we had all of the restrooms and the concession stands and everything that basically housed the water park amenities, had a foundation problem, and we were just going to be renovating it, had a foundation problem, and we decided as a group that we were going to need to give the people what they wanted, a brand new facility as opposed to renovations. And so we demoed the Nassau building. With that being said, we got all the plans together to build a new building back, and to come to find out there's a steel shortage, and that's being manufactured, and the manufacturing delays put us a little bit behind, a lot more behind than what we originally thought. And we're pushing the guys. The vendors are moving as fast as they can. Given the shortage and all of the COVID delays, didn't help at all. But we're trying the best we can to get this thing open in time for the kids to use it this summer.
Great. Well, and like I said, I wanted you to tell folks that because they start seeing the progression of it, and when things begin to slow down, we need to let folks know, hey, this is why we're slowing down. It's not we've got a whole lot of external factors that are there, and we just want folks to be involved in and with the knowledge of what's taking place here. So appreciate that.
Yeah, and one last thing, Commissioner,
Sure.
I told everybody when phase 4, the trail along Walt Stevens,
Yes.
was being built, and it was very, very ugly during during the construction part of it. And I promised the people that the final product would be something that they're going to be very, very, very proud of, and very surprised about how good it is and how much people are going to use it. Well, I can do the same thing with this water park. It's going to be ugly for a little bit, and it's going to seem like we're not moving as fast as we have been in the past, but I can promise you, once it is done, it will be well worth the wait.
Great.
And you just have to be patient with us to try and get this completed as quick as we can.
Well, I appreciate all your efforts and all your work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Troy. Next, we have Judge Keisha Wright Hill, who would like to begin to bring us some information on what's going on with the courts. Keisha, Judge.
Thank you, Commissioner. I did want to come on just to inform the community about the initiative that we are working with the county as far as the landlords and tenants trying to assist with unpaid rent. We have collaborated with the county, local nonprofits to distribute monies received. I believe we have received $1 million in CARES Act monies, as well as another, I don't know, maybe some $8 million to assist with rent, unpaid rent. And so what happens is any pending dispossessories, or what most people refer to as evictions, in the Clayton County Magistrate Court, we are going through one by one to see if there is a CDC declaration that's been filed. That declaration basically has put a halt on the court proceeding with any eviction on anyone that's filed that declaration. We've went through the files to pull those cases that have those declarations, as well as to look at any files where the tenant has claimed that they have been unable to pay rent due to COVID, whether it's they obtained COVID themselves, or they were out of work because they had to care for a relative, or they were not able to work because their children were home due to virtual learning. But if they have mentioned COVID or the pandemic, we have put those aside to be looked at as far as being eligible to receive monies. So in essence, what happens is we have case managers that have been hired that their goal is to contact the property owners to try to negotiate a settlement amount. The monies that will be paid will be for unpaid rent. So it would not, any late fees or attorney's fees will be deducted from that. So for example, if the tenant owes $8,500, they have a scale, but they may receive $8,250, $8,000, however the scale is. And once the landlord is in agreement with receiving those funds, we will be starting next week to issue those checks. So in essence, once the landlord says they agree with the settlement amount, we'll send them a settlement agreement. They'll sign off and have that notarized and bring that to the court. Once they have shown identification and proved who they are, then the check will be given to them. The tenant will come in and sign the same settlement agreement, and then the file will be given to me. Once I see that both parties have signed off on it, I will file a dismissal with the court, and that will close the case. So it is a win-win-win-win situation in that the tenant is able to keep a roof over their head and over their children and over their families' heads. It wipes the slate clean, so the property owner cannot come back after the tenant for the difference for those attorney's fees or filing fees or late fees. So it gives the tenant a clean slate. We're able to stop the bleeding that the property owners have incurred due to not receiving rent for months and months. We're able to stop the displacement of a large amount of Clayton County residents at one time, and we're also able to reduce the caseload in magistrate court. So it is a win-win-win-win situation for all parties involved. I will say that part of the settlement agreement, there is two parts that are important for the property owners to know. One, that they are, by accepting these funds, they are not able to come back after the tenant for the difference. So it zeroes them out. And then two, they are not able, if anyone attempts to try to sue the tenant for the sums that were settled, then that we're talking about government funds. So we're looking at possible fraud charges. You can't double dip and receive these funds and then try to turn around a month or two later and sue the tenant for the same amount. But absent those two issues, it does help get the money directly to the property owners. And I know that's been a big issue because we're coming up on a year. It is a year that we've been going through this pandemic. I know that there are a lot of property owners and landlords that have incurred a lot of loss. They're very frustrated due to the pandemic and the delay, but we are working expeditiously to try to get through all these files, to try to get these monies in the landlord's hands and to close out these cases. I will say that the other part of that is because I get calls every day in my office about the writs of possession, and the writs of possession, if an eviction has been filed and the tenant does not file an answer within 7 days, then the property owner can ask for possession of their property back. So you can imagine if you filed that in, I mean, I have some, I'm still seeing from March of last year, where you're not receiving any rent and you don't have possession of your property to either rent to someone else or to sell. So I've cleared out the backlog of those writs. I did that the first month. I came into office in January, so there's no more backlog. We get them in every day, and those writs are usually signed within a day or two of us receiving them in our office. But once we sign them, we send them back to the clerk, and they're submitted to the sheriff. And so I know that there are a lot of property owners and landlords who are upset because they're not able to obtain possession of their property back, again, to either rent to another renter or to sell. But the role of the magistrate court is to sign the order. We signed the order. Now, it's up to the sheriff's department to execute those writs. So for example, I had a gentleman contact my office, very upset. He has 7, 8 properties, and he wants his property back, understandably so. And so I've signed those writs. I've done my portion. That's all that the magistrate court can do is sign the orders. At that point, it goes to the sheriff's office. And if they have a signed writ of possession, because the clerk can clearly tell you that the writ was signed on whatever day, at that point, it's an issue with the sheriff's department, whether or not they choose to execute them, when and if that is left up to the sheriff's department. So I just wanted to clarify that issue because it comes up quite often and we can only do so much. I will say that the declaration is very, the CDC declaration is a very powerful document in that once we see that document, we have to stop any proceedings on the eviction. So I've had writs where I was going to sign, I open up the file and I see the declaration. I have to stop on that. That's one issue. If it stops the eviction proceedings as long as they have not been put out. So even if the sheriff is about to execute the writ of possession and they're about to put the tenant out and the tenant comes and shows that declaration to the sheriff, all proceedings, everything should stop. It's in order. Okay. And third, even if there's a hearing and we're in a hearing and we're doing a Zoom hearing and I'm about to make a ruling, if that issue comes up and they have the declaration, then all proceedings must stop. As of now, the order is to go in effect until March 31st. However, it can be extended. So if it's not extended after March 31st, then we can proceed with hearings. The sheriff can proceed with executing those writs. If, of course, it's extended, there's nothing we can do if that declaration has been filed. But as a property owner and a landlord, I think it would behoove you, if you have a tenant that has not paid rent, then it would assist you by making sure that your tenant does file the declaration, because then the case managers will be contacting you to try to get you these checks as soon as possible. So I just wanted to make the community aware, and it's very important that we all work to try to get this word out, because there's millions of dollars that's out here for this purpose, to assist the landlords and the tenants. And we have certain parameters that we can give it out. So it's important for everyone to get the word out. If you're a tenant or you know someone who has a pending eviction in Clayton County Magistrate Court, file the declaration, or when you do your answer, make sure that it states a COVID-related reason. If you're a landlord or a property owner and you have this issue with your tenants, have your tenants to file the declaration. But I think if each one of us get the word out, it will spread and we'll be able to use these monies for their intended purpose.
Great. Thank you, Judge. Thank you. We need that information. It's so important in this area. And I know we all know somebody and we need to assist them in what we can do. I'm going to jump a little bit out of order since Judge spoke about that and bring up Ms. Linda Boswell to begin to discuss also about assistance with mortgages, utilities, of that aspect with her department. Ms. Boswell.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yes, HUD gave our department, but Clayton County, and is administered through our department, the COVID-19 rental assistance relief. And I do have a presentation I would like to pull up. IT, it was sent to you, so could you pull it up? Yes, there we go. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, the COVID-19, okay, next slide. The COVID-19 release assistance can be used if you have a reduction in hours at work due to COVID-19, you have complete loss of employment, the Clayton County Public School System transitioned to virtual classes, which impacted childcare and work. You can also receive if you're receiving unemployment due to COVID-19. If you have unpaid leave due to mandatory quarantine, or any person in the household who has contracted COVID-19 virus. Next slide, please. And we require some supporting documentation. First of all, you must complete the application, and I will go over that a little bit later in the presentation. We look at your pay stubs for the entire household to determine eligibility. Now, because these are federal funds awarded by HUD, HUD determines eligibility based on your income of the entire household. So say if you have a husband, wife in the household, we look at their income. If you have adult children in the household who are working, we look at their income. Mother, grandmother, whoever lives with you, they have income. We look at all of that to determine eligibility. Also, we want you to submit a hardship letter. I mean, because who knows your story better than you? Also, we require that you have identification for the state or federal issue ID. We look at birth certificates of the children only. And the reason we look at the birth certificates is because we want to determine that these are your children. Because we've had cases where some people say, I have 5 children for our program to meet the eligibility. Well, come to find out they didn't have 5 kids. They just said that. So we need the birth certificates to determine that. Also, we want your most recent mortgage statements or your lease agreement with the apartments. And we also want copies of your utility bills as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, now a little bit about the application process. The application process, we tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. So you will go to www.claytoncountyhud.com. Once you're at that link, you select pre-application. You complete the application, you send in all your supporting documentation that we talked about. Then your application will be reviewed for eligibility. You will also receive an email confirmation with approval or denial of services. We also provide 3 months rental assistance or mortgage assistance and a one-time utility payment. Now, remember, this program assists rental if you're behind on your rent or if you have a mortgage. If you're behind on your mortgage, we will pay 3 months of assistance. Next slide, please. Okay, now in order to receive, we do not issue any checks to clients. All mortgage companies and property managers must register on the portal in order to receive a check from Clayton County Board of Commissioners. Again, no checks will be issued to the clients. The vendor must upload the W-9 form. Then our department will need the vendor ID name or registered name in order for us to issue a check to them. Once registered, the vendor will email the information to akila.ford@claytoncountyga.gov, or Tina Nehru@claytoncountyga.gov. Next slide. Next. Okay, now, this is what I want to show you. When you go to claytoncountyhud.com, you will click on the link that's highlighted in blue that says pre-application link, click here. You will click that link. When you click that link, let's go to the next slide, please. When you click that link, it brings you here. The Clayton County HUD Program Division, the ESG COVID-19 pre-application. And you read the instructions here. And next page. Next slide, please. And you fill out the information, okay? We made this user-friendly. We made it easy. We want your name, your address, and your contact information. Also, we want you to tell us, what are you seeking assistance for? Is it rental assistance? Is it mortgage assistance? Or just utility only? We have some cases where people have paid, they've struggled and they paid their rent, but they just need help with paying the utilities. So we are able to help keep the utilities on. So once you fill out the application, it's very easy. It tells you exactly what to upload. Once you submit that to us, then we will review your application for eligibility. Also, next slide, please. Also at that site, claytoncountyhud.com, once you're at that site, we also have assistance resources that you can click on that link where it says COVID-19 assistance resources. If you click that link, that would take you to the list of resources that we have available to assist you as well. So let's go to the next page. Next slide, please. And we'll pull that up. And here we are. For our department, for this program, we have a list of all these resources that are available to the citizens to help them during this pandemic time. And those are the contact numbers and the email addresses as well. So again, for our program, we can provide direct assistance if you're behind on your rent, your mortgage, or your utilities. We determine eligibility based on your household size. And all we need to do is verify that you were impacted by COVID. Are there any questions?
Sorry, any questions for Ms. Boswell? Thank you, Ms. Boswell.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for her? I know it's been a lot of information here between Judge Wright and Ms. Boswell, but we've got to get this information to our citizens to make sure that they're taken care of in this time of need. So we want to make sure we get that done. Now I can go back. I'm going to bring up PD, Chief Roberts. Can you begin to give us some updates? I know we had some questions too that the citizens had asked and that you wanted to address as well.
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, District
Morning.
4. As usual, we'll start with overall crime. I don't know if you were able to obtain our final numbers for 2020. They're posted on the Clayton County Police Department website at claytonpolice.com. We were down overall 20% in crime. That's a third consecutive decrease in crime overall, which is great. And that's all result of collaborations and partnership with the PD, local law enforcement, and of course, our community. That being said, last weekend was NBA All-Star Weekend in Metro Atlanta. And through our intelligence, we were able to identify some local areas within the county where we anticipated events that might draw some attention and possibly increase crime. That being said, we deployed our specialized resources, our traffic unit, our narcotics unit, and Tiger unit in those areas, and we were able to maintain a safe weekend. They were actually very active and wrote 251 citations, made 29 arrests, and seized 6 weapons on the streets of Clayton County to keep us safe throughout the weekend. And we also had a visit from a group of street racers, which I know plagues several metropolitan counties and some places on District 4. And I'm pleased to report that group of street racers was not within the county jurisdiction very long, as they were met with a wave of law enforcement with the lights on, containing them and actually urging them to leave pretty briskly. And this has happened a few times. We have developed an effective approach to urging them to go elsewhere. And we were effective this weekend due to the collaborations of law enforcement. And finally, vacancies. You always want to know how many men and women we have serving the citizens of Clayton County. Our vacancy number remains at 18, which is very low. We've been trending in a great direction as far as filling vacancies going forward, and we'll continue to do so. And that means overall reduced crime, I hope, for a 4th consecutive year in the future. There was one question remaining from our last meeting, Commissioner, if I can go ahead and address that now. And it related to, I believe, littering and dumping. And the question was about increasing fines related to those violations. Well, we have both a local county ordinance and state law that we use to address littering and dumping. And actually it's a pretty strong county ordinance and state law. In violations of those laws, you can receive a maximum fine of $1,000 and serve up to 6 months in jail, either or both, depending on what the course of action is chosen by the court. That being said, in the past, I know I've received complaints from citizens about those disciplinary actions not really being imposed. And I'm pleased that we have our new magistrate court judge with us today, because I think there's been a change in mindset in the leadership of Clayton County, where cleanliness is a priority throughout the county. And I'm confident, after speaking with our judge and also our solicitor, that they would support our efforts moving forward. So I don't know that there's a need to change the ordinance or fines, more than just for the leadership of law enforcement to communicate better with the courts what we need as far as discouraging repeat offenses like that. And I intend to do so. I intend to lead that charge from where I sit. And there was a question about money that was, I guess, generated through the fines being used for other things. Of course, I can't speak to that in my capacity. Commissioner Davis might be able to assist me to answer that portion of the question. And I believe that was Miss Judy Taylor, who's very active in the community and a strong supporter of keeping Clayton clean. So I totally agree. When the opportunity arises and we have offenders that want to litter and dump on the Clayton County streets, you can look forward to the police department seeking the strongest discipline that we can in support from our court system.
Great, great. Thank you, Chief Roberts. In fact, I'm so glad today we actually have our COO on the call today, Mr. Stanford. And Mr. Stanford might be a little more equipped to begin to handle that question about fines and transferring those funds. That's something I know a lot of times we want to go through legal to check first before we respond. But Mr. Stanford, are you there?
I am, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Or is it still? Yes, still morning. So we're running from meeting to meeting. To answer that question, Commissioner, yeah, we have been in discussions with the CFO as well as the chairman with regard to how can we use the funding to help address quality of life issues throughout the county, whether we redirect that funding to help with equipment or even personnel has kind of been part of the discussion. We hadn't landed on anything in particular, but clearly that will be a policy decision the Board of Commissioners will take up. So as Chief alluded to, and with Judge Wright Hill on the call, we know just through the collaboration, we certainly will make best use of those fees and fines once they are actually put forth to ensure that we can continue to address quality of life throughout the county in some systematic way.
Great. And I know, Ms. Taylor, and I don't know if everyone is aware that the Keep Clayton Beautiful initiative has been abolished in the county um, by a 3-2 vote. That was abolished. So hopefully we'll get something in to replace that, to begin to assist our chief and everyone else in keeping our county and going forward to try to beautify this county even more. So thank you. Thank you, Ms. COO.
Commissioner Davis, can I just address briefly the county ordinance fines? Let me just say this, and I think it's important for the community to know what magistrate court does, and that will lead into my position as far as the county ordinance fines. Just so everyone is aware, everything the magistrate court handles. We handle the first appearances where we're issuing bonds once someone is incarcerated in Clayton County. We're handling the preliminary hearings to determine whether or not there's enough probable cause to even move the case to state or superior court. We're handling all of the bond hearings. So to determine whether a bond needs to be set or it needs to be modified at a later time. We handle pre-issuance hearings when citizens are able to take out warrants, and we'll determine if probable cause is sufficient to have a arrest warrant. We issue the search and the arrest warrants in Clayton County. We handle the child abandonment cases as far as children that have not been provided support by their parents within 30 days of the application. We issue the TPO hearings, orders, the temporary protective orders, which most people know as restraining orders. We do all of the dispossessories. We handle the civil trials where the amount in controversy or in dispute is $15,000 or less. And of course, we conduct weddings. And we do county ordinances. So by the time we get to all of that, we have to do all of that, and then we have to handle county ordinances. And my position is, we have a code enforcement board, which oftentimes the issues as far as the county ordinances can be handled at that point. But for whatever reason, if the violator does not go to court or fails to show after continuance, or just does not comply with the order or the board, then it's brought to magistrate court. So my tolerance is low as far as not paying a fine when we have all of these other major issues that we have to handle. And now you're coming before the court because you choose to litter, because you choose to not comply with the laws of the county or the state. I have a serious issue with that. And I'm just going to put out there, I will be putting forth the maximum fine. Absent, of course, there's an exception to every rule. So we learned that in law school. There's a rule, there's an exception to every rule. So of course, you provide documentation, you're been hospitalized, or there is something that is an exception. But absent an exception, you've went through code enforcement, it's been put before us, and now I have to hear why you chose to litter or do whatever it is you have to do. For the most part, we're going to start at the maximum. You're going to have to convince me why it should not be the maximum. So I'm just putting that out there. It will behoove the citizens or the violators to try to resolve their issue with code enforcement and pay their fines there, because I can pretty much guarantee it's not going to be less in court. Let me put that out there.
Thank you for that, Judge, and that's what we need. We need that backup there, and you are definitely going to provide that for us. Let me go back 1 second to Chief Roberts. Chief Roberts, there was also a follow-up on that with the truck parking on Battle Creek along South Lake Parkway.
I didn't see that one on my list. What do you have?
Well, it's basically, and I think that's coming from the same. Can you give the status of all the truck parking that is going up along Battle Creek and South Lake Parkway? Is there a limit to the number of lots the county will approve in this one area for truck parking? I can't say this. I did go back to community development and spoke with Mr. Njike on this matter. The property that I believe you're speaking about is on the corner of 54 and Battle Creek, and that was already zoned. I can tell you this, I will not be supporting any truck parking anywhere in District 4 for that overnight around that area. And, unless community development gives me a good reason to begin to support that. So that's my position on it. We've got to begin to control this issue. I'm not going to call it a problem, but this issue. Some of it could be productive for us. Some of it could be counterproductive. So we've got to look at it wisely and begin to implement the strongest strategy to keep our county moving forward positively.
Commissioner Davis, this is Judy
Yes,
Taylor.
ma'am.
Okay, the question I had was, I believe we have a zoning issue that's coming up at your very next meeting that will involve truck and trailer parking on South Lake Parkway. And that's one of the reasons I asked the question, because that adds in more truck and trailer parking in that very same area. And while I'm talking to you about that, the new zoning signs that have been put up, and there's one there now, they're very small, very hard to read, and blend in with everything else there. So I'm not sure that anybody else has noticed them, except I read on the agenda it was coming up and I looked for them. And that was about the parking I was talking about there. And then I want to jump over to to Mr. Stanford about what's happening with littering and everything else in the area. I was talking about the funds. Since you brought it up about Clayton Clean and Beautiful being abolished, there was money in there that will go back into the general fund because we no longer will have a person we're paying and doing whatever on that. I was talking about using those funds possibly to, of course, to add more cameras, to do more policing, do whatever we need for that. But also, have we thought about working with the chamber and the other cities and the businesses and everybody to have a big blitz over the need for this cleanup, asking people like Low Temp and Chick-fil-A and others to sponsor a lot of these things? They could put things up on their marquees. They could say, keep Clayton clean, let's clean it up. They could pick out mascots. They could have kids in schools, that would help us with posters and things where they could pick like, slogans and things like that. And we work to do a big blitz and let people know about these fines, and that if they do this, that they're going to have to pay, and that we are serious about it. Just a big major blitz all over the whole county to clean this county up. And I believe we could get something going with something like this.
Okay, that's kind of a very multi-tentacle question you've asked, which is going to go to a lot of different individuals. I'm going to allow, Mr. Stanford, if you can hold on, because the next one up was, who was it up? Was Captain Flynn. And so I'm going to allow Captain Flynn to begin to go over some of his stats and what he can do. And then I'm going to bring on Warden Nelson to begin to discuss some of these other pieces to what you're speaking about.
Hey, good morning, everybody. As far as Sector 4 goes, we've seen a slight rise in some of so as you can see on the stats from the past week. What I will say, as far as stolen vehicles, we are still seeing a unusually high number of vehicles that are being left at gas stations, convenience stores, things like that are being left out front running, and the person thinks they're just running inside for a minute, and when they come out, their vehicle's gone. So those are crimes of opportunity that if the owners themselves will just take those car keys with them and turn the vehicle off, they probably would not happen. As to the burglary number, we've seen a rise in burglary. There's no real pattern to it. What I will say is several of those burglaries this past week were ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend type situations where somebody came back while the other party wasn't home and basically took their stuff and things that did not belong to them. The thing that I'm seeing right now that is a pattern that had been happening on some of the other sectors, particularly up on District 2, had been package thefts. We had not really had a problem with it, and I have seen a increase in FedEx packages, UPS packages, stuff from Amazon being taken off people's porches. That's one of those things that it's a growing problem, really nationwide. And just some awareness, and I know like Amazon has hub locations where you can go and just basically have your package delivered there instead of to your house. I would encourage people to work with your neighbors. If you know you have a package coming and you see that it's been delivered, if you have a neighbor that you trust, ask them to go over and pick it up off your porch and go and get it from them later in the day when you get home. we really haven't had any kind of leads or any kind of anything on those. It's just folks are coming home and finding their packages being taken. But overall, we have had in the past, we had the issue with the catalytic converter thefts. I'm happy to report, and many of you already know, that one of my sergeants actually caught a catalytic converter thief just by being attentive. And it turned out just from a traffic stop of somebody being suspicious that had an invalid tag on the vehicle, and he wound up catching him with over 50 catalytic converters in his car, and those had been taken from Heritage Mitsubishi and Toyota South. So we did catch that, and I will say since that time we have not had any more. I hesitate to say we've caught all of them, because in some of the previous ones we had 2 to 3 people that were involved, but we did catch one person, and since that time I have not, in the last 2 weeks, I have not had any catalytic converter thefts. As far as our entering auto problem, it's still largely concentrated in the apartment complexes along Terra Boulevard. There's an occasional one that's occurring at residential areas that are, housing type areas. The common thing is items are being left in vehicles that are just readily visible, and it's crimes of opportunity. They walk by, they see it, and in some cases the vehicles are left unlocked, and in others they're breaking windows and just getting what they can get and disappearing. But we have been really proactive in that area. I've had undercover patrols. We've been utilizing undercover officers. I've spoke with the sheriff's department. They have been supporting it, and we've also had our helicopter involved, and we're trying to do everything we can to see if we can kind of put an end to that as well, and catch some folks and hopefully put an end to that. That's really all I have right now, Commissioner.
Great, thank you for that. Do we have any questions for Captain? Great. All right, well, next we're going to stay on this line, because we're gonna get back to Ms. Taylor and all of her issues that she was stating. We want to bring up Lieutenant Green, and let's Lieutenant Green speak about it in Sector 4 as well, because as we know, District 4, we are split with our sector captains. Is Lieutenant Green on? If not, I tell you what, then how about Detective Bryant? You there?
I'm here, sir.
Great.
Okay, I sent in a PowerPoint. Can you pull it up for me, please? As you've already spoken to our chief, Kevin Roberts, and our deputy chief, Bruce Parks. You can go to the next slide. As Commissioner Davis explained, Sector 4 is split into 2 individuals, such as Captain Gary Flynn for Sector 4 and Captain Michael Green for Sector 2. And this is their contact information if you need to get in contact with them. The next slide, please. And of course, this handsome gentleman that you see here is myself, Detective Rodney Bryant. I am your Sector 4 liaison. Any questions as far as dealing with the public and things that you may need, I would please feel free to contact me, and I can answer any questions when it comes to issues within our Sector 4. And you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, one of the things that the chief was adamant about is because of the, with the dealing with COVID, and we used to have one of our big things with the citizens was to our Citizens Police Academy, and we were unable to have any since the start of the COVID. So now that we're going to have our first class since this, and it's going to be done virtually, and it's going to actually start on March the 29th. The actual last day to register for our Citizens Police Academy is going to be March the 24th. So if you want to, you can call that number to register, but to actually register, you need to contact Officer Stroud, which is Aubrielle Stroud@claytoncountyga.gov or Officer Johnny Carroll at johnny.carroll@claytoncountyga.gov. And these classes will be hourly classes that will be held every Monday from 6:30 to 7:30. And you will be able to have experiences with different aspects, and you'll be able to meet different people in our departments, such as SWAT, traffic, gangs, E911, CSI, gun safety, and bombs, plus much more that's not even listed. So if you have any people that want to be involved with our Citizens Police Academy, the deadline is March the 24th to register for classes that will be starting on March the 29th. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, and also we want to let everybody know that we are still conducting our Neighborhood Watch programs, and these programs are also being held virtually. Excuse me. They'll be held virtually, and people have questions about how to start their program. Well, of course, you need to contact me at rodney.bryant@claytoncountyga.gov, as well as have an established president, secretary, and treasurer. And to get certified as a Neighborhood Watch program, they will be split into 3 one-hour classes that will be conducted virtually. And upon the completion of this Neighborhood Watch program, you will be given a certificate to certify your neighborhood as a Neighborhood Watch. Our chief is usually present on the first one to introduce himself to the new establishment of your Neighborhood Watch program. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, and also a little over a year ago, we, as Clayton County Police Department, excuse me, I'm sorry. We collaborated with Ring with their new program of Neighbors by Ring. And what this does, it lets us assist our citizens throughout the whole county. And as far as being able to have access to your cameras that are at your door. That doesn't mean that we actually have the access to your cameras. It just allows us, with your permission, to be able to look at the videos and things that you submit as far as trying to curb the crime or any suspicious activities in your neighborhood. They are monitored by our CSI, I'm sorry, they are monitored by your sectors. We have sector 1, 2, and 3, and 4. They're monitored by them. They're also monitored by our community affairs unit, as well as our detectives within investigations. And we also do investigations based upon the information you send us. So it's imperative that you allow us to be able to view your videos or post them, because we do look. Even though you don't see us, we will make contact with you, and we do make posts in reference to the videos that are being posted. We'll go to the next slide. And we are being very active. As you see now, we're doing a lot of live events on the activities that are going on inside of our community. We're doing live events for anything that's really major as far as traffic or very dire incidents that happen in the area. And we're trying to let the citizens know as soon as possible. And we're doing this on Facebook and Instagram right now, but you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, and Instagram. Go on, next slide, please. And one of the most important things that the chief always wants us to let everybody know that we are hiring. So if you know anyone that wants to follow a career in the police department, please apply with us at www.claytonpolice.com. That's all I have. You any other questions?
Well, I thank you, Detective Pretty Boy Bryant, for that.
Commissioner, I don't need you adding on to that. I'm gonna close out the PD portion with this. Lieutenant Maddox was on scene for Captain Green. He had some technical difficulties, but he did not have anything else to add. And I don't know if the handsome fellow mentioned it. The virtual presentation of our Citizens Police Academy will be abbreviated, but those actual practical applications and demonstrations that we normally do, we will resume when it's safe to do so after everybody's vaccinated or this pandemic is reasonably under control. Thank you, Mr. Handsome, Detective Bryant. Appreciate you. That's all we got, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. We're all over on this on this Saturday. Let me bring up which she's going to speak on a zoning issue coming up, but Miss Madeline Span of Community Development. I want to bring you up and let you begin to discuss some of the issues that you were going to discuss, but some of the other questions that we've heard coming in.
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, whichever it is at this hour, to Commissioner Davis, Clayton staff, and the District 4 constituents. Good to have you before us this morning. We have quite a few heavy matters, I call them, on the zoning arena. 3 ordinances that are in play right now. There is a ordinance in play regarding a moratorium on single-family new construction. That moratorium it was a 180-day moratorium until we've had the opportunity to draft a ordinance, a code, to address a trending thing in the development community where single-family neighborhoods are being constructed, either single-family detached neighborhoods or townhomes. And then the developers will go in after that and rent out these structures as rental properties. So essentially you have a rental community, though it's intended to be a single-family community. So that has happened in Stockbridge, and I think they've got some legislation going to address that. So this is our attempt to try to head it off. So we're in drafting a ordinance now to address new single-family construction. So that's why the moratorium is in place on new single-family construction until that ordinance has been adopted. We are on a fast track to get something in place, but again, the 180-day moratorium actually goes to August. But I feel certain that we'll have something in play before that period expires. So that's ordinance number 1 that's in play. Ordinance number 2 should be something that the Clayton constituents should be happy about. It's a proposed ordinance on a small box. Small box being defined as what we know as the dollar stores primarily. The board has initiated a text amendment for us to address the terminology of a small box so that we could better regulate it. The way the ordinance is currently regulated, based on the fact sheet that I have before you, is a very short definition. Right now it's defined as a store that sells its products at lower prices. Well, we certainly know that could mean almost anything, and that has certainly been somewhat of a challenge in trying to interpret who is a discount store, who is a dollar store. So the ordinance is now being recommended for the language to be changed, and that language is the language we're seeing here before us, and it's a lot more detailed. You can see it's a lot more verbiage here. Basically, it says a retail establishment with a floor area less than 12,000 square feet that offers for sale a combination and a variety of convenience shopping goods, consumer shopping goods, including household goods, personal care products, entertainment products, electronics, and other consumer products, including food or beverages for off-premise consumption. And that is continuously offer a majority of their items in inventory for sale at less than $10 per item. This definition does not include grocery stores, pharmacies, a convenience store that sells gasoline, service stations, but beauty supply stores, art supply stores, office supply stores, small retail stores, less than 5,000 square feet, which is housed inside an office building. So again, this long definition is trying to narrow down so that we could clearly identify what appears to be a dollar store type operation. And once we can clearly define it, then we can thereby we can proceed in regulating it. This text amendment will replace the terminology in the code that says discount store, and will now replace that terminology with small box discount variety store, where we have a very clearly defined term. The districts that are impacted now, where they are currently allowed as a conditional use permit, these uses will continue to be allowed as a conditional use permit in the districts MXI, mixed commercial industrial, the general business district, the mixed residential commercial district, and the Highway 54 overlay district. That's where they are identified in the code as being permitted, and they will be CUPs based on some standards that we will identify in the next few sections. And the use is prohibited in a mixed use district. We have quite a few mixed use districts in and around District 4, and discounts, variety stores will be prohibited in those districts and not allowed as a permitted use. So I move forward to the standards on the next page, which relates to the standards. So now that this is a conditional use permit, there are certain stipulations that have to be applied to that conditional use permit. And that stipulation is this, that if you have a small box discount variety store, well, first of all, they're prohibited unless they are 1 mile from another store. So there's a 1 mile separation between a small box store. And there's a requirement that it has to be at least 5 miles from a full-size grocery store. The next standard is that outdoor display was prohibited. And the other requirement that we speak of and the standards relate to the fact that if you are requesting a CUP, that you also be stipulated to have 10% of your floor area dedicated to fresh produce, meat, or dairy. So that is some of the major crux of the small boxes. Of course, one other one that's kind of major, and that's the dumpster issue. We're requiring that the dumpsters be enclosed and locked, and because we all understand what issues we've been having in some of our dollar stores where they have been dumping illegally. So these development standards would go with a conditional use permit to allow one of those uses to occur in the county. The issue behind small box or dollar stores, shall we say, has been one that's has looked at that it impacts our healthy community because of the fact that we have a store that certainly sells a lot of hand to retail items, but it does not provide fresh foods. And when these type stores saturate the community, then they are in strong competition to full grocery stores, which will bring you more healthy foods, because it's, certainly there is some marketing that goes there. So here we're dealing with a healthy community issue, that these saturation of these stores diminish our ability to get to fresh foods. So this is our intent here behind this ordinance, is that by providing this distance separation and these other standards, that we'll begin to address the healthy, what we call the food absence that we have in our community, healthy foods. So that's text amendment number 1 that's there. And I will be able to address questions to this as we move through the presentation, or certainly you can reach out to our office. I'm Madeline Spann, the zoning administrator, and with the Community Development Office. So I'm open to any questions for you. And if you want to have this ordinance in detail, I can certainly send it forward to you. The next matter is another big one in our community. That's the issue. We can move to the next document on proposed group homes. We have an amendment before the code, and that'll be the next document that we have that's titled proposed group homes. The county has initiated a text amendment that will first identify and address the definitions in our code. One thing that strongly impacts how we regulate group homes is the definition of family. We have family is a defined term in our code, and I'll address that term for you. And if Leah, we can get the next document, then we could take a look at it from there. So our code now currently identifies family as an individual of 2 or more persons, if related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or guardianship, and not more than 3 unrelated persons occupying a single dwelling unit using the same cooking facilities. So if you have a family, and then it's unlimited on the number of persons that can occupy that home, of course. But if you are unrelated persons, then the code currently says 4 unrelated persons. So in a household, if you got more than 4 unrelated persons, then you're now 4 or more, you're now a group type facility. and not considered single family. And that's how you begin to impact our other terms in the code as to how you're classified, because now you're not a family if you have more than 4 unrelated persons. Well, that term family is being redefined to now move that number down to 3. So if you have more than 3 unrelated persons, then you are now not classified as a family and therefore fall categorically either a group home or boarding house type environment. This number on family has been trending over the years in terms of how we regulate the environment of group homes. One time years ago, it started out at 6. So you can see as we begin to try to regulate and get a handle on protecting our communities from what could be an institutional type environment once you bring in a lot of group facilities, that the definition of family, as we begin to reduce those numbers, it helps us to control and regulate. So again, the definition of family being the key component is now being changed from 4 unrelated persons down to 3 unrelated persons. So that will help us, again, regulate who is and who's not a family. Then that goes on to impact boarding homes. We are clearly defining what a boarding home is. And additionally, group home, we're clearly defining that a group home is a facility that is generally related to some social program of sorts, not transitional type housing. We make it clear that group home and boarding homes do not relate to what we refer to as transitional housing, because transitional housing is somewhat related to prison release facilities, homeless type housing opportunities. So it's not intended for a boarding home or a group home to address that population. We do have a future text amendment coming forward to clearly identify and to address where and how we should address transitional housing. This text amendment does not address that. It only addresses boarding homes, group homes, and lastly, personal care homes. So these are the 3 that are pretty much challenged in our ordinance in identifying whether or not they are family or whether or not they're actually one of these legal operations. Most of us know what a personal care home operation is. They're licensed by the state. The state does all the regulatory operations for that facility. The county only addresses the land use and the licensing in terms of the business license. So as a personal care home, we go into the code requirements that how our code is set up. And I guess if I can get to the next document, Leah, that would kind of lay the platform out for what we're amending here. The personal care home, group home, and boarding house are permitted in all of our single family residential districts currently at 4 or less. I mean, 4 or less persons could occupy our single family neighborhoods. With this new text amendment, they will continue to be allowed in the single family district, but it would be for 3 or less. So if you were to have a personal care home in your residence, you would have to have not more than 3 unrelated persons to operate. So the number is being dropped from 4 down to 3. And at the point where it's 4 or more, that will require a conditional use permit in any of our residential districts. So we'll have the opportunity to have input through the public hearing process. It is, again, this number, as it impacts family, help to identify what is truly a family or what may or may not be a family. It's no longer compatible because of the number of people that may be occupying one particular dwelling. So that's the intent of this text amendment, is to change that definition of family so that we could better regulate the influx of group home facilities in our community. So that takes care of that. And again, I know this is a lot of information, and these are the kind of amendments that we've been looking forward to help address some of the issues we've been having in Clayton. So I'll be happy to entertain questions from the audience. I know this forum is probably somewhat difficult to do that.
Yes, this is Judy Taylor. I'm the one that really, I asked for this presentation, and I appreciate it because
So
I think
that's why
anytime we
certainly
have.
am available.
Anytime we have something as big as this that impacts our neighborhoods, I think that, you know, it's good to discuss it and know whether we want to have input before it's approved or whatever. Because I have a real concern, because those of us who live in either
Ms. Taylor,
RS, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
yes, ma'am, you blanked out on me for one moment, but I hear you now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I have a real concern because those of us who live in RS 180s, RS 110s, and everything else are more likely to have these boarding houses and group homes because people can afford the houses much more than they can in those that have the more expensive subdivisions and everything else too. So we have to monitor this and be very careful. I have a question. It says in there somewhere that in my information that I got, that a boarding house is comprised of, they can rent weekly or longer rentals. So in other words, if you have a boarding house, then they can rent out by the week and everything. It sounds like that's sort of like short-term rentals and everything else too. And so I was concerned about that. And I was also concerned about a question I had about the fact that you can only have so many of these in a distance, like within a mile apart. Does that mean that we can't have any of these any closer than 1 mile from the other one? In other words, so we would not have a neighborhood with 4 or 5 or 6 group homes, boarding homes, all those kinds of things. So is that protected in this? I think this is all better. I think what I see is a big improvement. I just still did have some questions about this.
Yes, ma'am. There's a distance requirement that's in place so that they don't saturate one community. So yes, they would have to be 1 mile apart, and that would be measured from the property lines and not down the street. So if you had a community behind you, you still have the protection that that community behind you would not have a group facility within 1 mile of the one that already exists. And the other thing that's in that ordinance that helps is that there's a minimum of 2 acres. That's for a facility that's for 4 or more. You have to be on property that's at least 2 acres in size so that you have ample amount of room to accommodate a larger residence in that home. And there's also some requirements for fencing at that level. So once you reach 4 or more, then you are more categorically a group home, or in another category that has more stipulations. It requires a conditional use permit, and there are standards that we'll have to go by in order to identify whether or not it's compatible for that community. Now, if it meets the definition of family, then our hands are a little bit tied, because we can't regulate your family and how do you operate. So once another household mimics and meets family, we can't regulate that either. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right.
What do we do about if there's an existing group homes, an existing boarding house, or maybe a boarding house that's not even regulated, or that's not even an official boarding house, but is a boarding house, and a group home? Will these new things impact them? Are they going to be grandfathered in to stay the way they are? And are they going to have to go by the new regulations? And also, how do you go in and investigate whether something is a group home to find out if they're running it without doing all the things they need to do as far as licensing and inspections and those kinds of things?
Right. Well, we'll continue to use our same standards for code enforcement. Certainly the ones that are legally existing would be grandfathered. Those that may be operating without the appropriate licensings would not be grandfathered. And we would use the same code enforcement approach that we do now. So if there are known facilities, then we go out and investigate whether or not they're licensed or not, and how many residents they have, so that we could determine what's the appropriate process for them to be dealt with.
Great. Thank you for that. I know we're running a little late. We usually try to get these in and get the questions in, but I know this is a lot of information that we're trying to give to our constituents, and we want to answer all the questions. So any other additional questions we have, we want to make sure those questions are brief so that we can get to them. But I want to bring up, because we've got several from code enforcement, and Warden Nelson, we want to bring you all in to tell us what's going on and answer any questions.
I did have a question. This is Janice Arcuria. What is being done as far as Airbnbs or VRBOs or overnight rentals?
Is that a planning question or code enforcement question?
Well, I guess it's, is there an ordinance being put in place so that code enforcement would be involved, or?
Yes, yes, there is a code in place. They are pretty much I think the most, let's see, the most complete or safest standard of that Airbnb and ordinance is that the residence has to be that person's resident. So which means they have to have a driver's license to identify that home is their resident. So that's one mechanism we try to use in trying to control the numbers and to keep them somewhat more personally regulated by having the requirement of that being the home of the applicant, and not that a person can go out and rent up a bunch of houses or own several homes and decide they want to use them for Airbnb. It should be identified as their residence.
So if that is happening, if a non-owner is renting out, does one report it to code enforcement?
I'll let code enforcement address whatever issues that they're having out there in the field. We do know we get complaints from all sorts of directions, but they are required to be licensed through the occupational business license.
Okay, thank you.
Ward Nelson?
Good morning. I guess it's good afternoon now. I'll be brief because I have Captain Gooden online to represent Refuse Control Division, and I have Captain McDonald to represent Code Enforcement Division. I just wanted to give you a little brief background. You know, all this is under Corrections Department. It all starts with the prison, and we've been making chicken soup out of chicken feathers. You know, with the COVID, there are a lot of ceases on inmate movement throughout the state system. They're not getting in inmates from the jails. That's all starting to open up now. We're actually down close to 100 inmates from what we are usually having. So, but we're putting every available work crew out there that we can and trying to keep up with the demand. And we've been doing very, very good at being able to do that. So the COVID issue has not been our facility, it's been in the state. And now that that's all starting to loosen up, I think we're probably going to be expecting to get in many more inmates, and we'll be able to put more out on the street, making a better impact on the trash pickup and litter control. Thank you so much, Judge, having you on here. We really, really appreciate being able to help us out, to put some bite into, you know, some of these folks that are doing these violations. And a big brag on Captain McDonald and his lieutenant. They actually caught somebody in the act of dumping last week in broad daylight. So these folks don't care. They throw it out in the middle of the day or the middle of the night. But we have all of the eyes of code enforcement and all the eyes of refuse control and the prison out there reporting it and picking it up as quick as we can find it. And so every now and then we get lucky and we catch somebody at fault, you know, somebody doing the violation. If you see illegal dumping, please call the police department right away. And hopefully we'll be able to catch them. And I'll yield to Captain, I just promoted you, Captain Gooden, to go over refuse control real quick, her stats, and then we'll move over to Captain McDonald.
Good morning, Commissioner. It's finally nice to actually meet you in person. I've been at Refuse Control now since November. Currently, we have about 39 employees that we go out, we picking up the trash, we picking up the dumpings, the dead animals. We're also doing the paid tickets where the constituents can call in and for a fee, we pick up the bulk trash. For the month of February, we were able to walk 14 roads and pick up 16 dumpings. I'm kind of new at this, so I'm a little nervous here. If you have any questions, I can't think of anything else.
Just take your time.
Yes, sir.
And just kind of elaborate real quickly on what walking roads means.
We work in conjunction with the prison, and we have a detail officer, inmate. Sometimes we'll have a civilian driver. And we have a list of roads that we walk monthly. And then also constituents can call in, or they can report a road on Click Fix Clayton. And we'll go out and we'll pick up all the litter that's on there, on the county roads, the right of ways. So that's pretty much what picking up the roads entail. Normally, if it's reported, I try to take about a week and a half turnaround time. Right now, because of COVID, we're limited as far as resources. Normally, we have community workers, maybe about 50 to 80 individuals that doing community service that walk the roads. But right now, currently, we're just using inmates. We also offer debris services, where your constituents can call in to refuse control and notify us that they have bulk trash that they need picked up. An inspector will go out. The fee starts at $20. Once the constituent calls in and pay for their services, within like 1 to 3 business days, we'll come out and we'll pick up their bulk trash and dispose of it.
And it's real important. I want to add that when she says $20, that's typically about a pickup truck size load. We send an inspector out, we estimate it, we come out, we pick it up. You don't have to put your hands on it once you move it out to the street. We take it to the landfill, we dump it, you avoid that $40 landfill fee. So it's a great deal for citizens here. Now, not all of them are going to be $20 a load. You know, if you've got a dump truck load, it'll be priced proportionately, but we will give an estimate. Is that all you had, Captain Gooden?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. You'll get used to this. It's no problem.
I had a question about that.
Yes.
What you were saying about as far as picking stuff up, and it might be $20, starts at $20. I'm trying to understand, does that depend on the kind of trash it is? Like, say, what if somebody has like an old refrigerator?
No, it's just when they come out, whatever you have out, there's certain items we don't pick up, but we pick up furnitures, limbs. They can't be tree logs, tree stumps. I'm sorry, tree stumps. We don't pick up paint, batteries, hazardous materials. But when the inspector comes out, whatever you have out, they'll base it on starting at $20. So it could be anything. We also don't do household garbage. But if it's like, as I said, if you clean up your yard or you're doing spring cleaning, you want to get rid of some items, they'll come out and they'll start at $20. So it could be, you may have a refrigerator that may be $20. You can have a refrigerator, couch. It's just going to depend. There's no set. It's not like it's $20 for a refrigerator and then $40 for a couch. It just depends. It's calculated all together.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And turn it over to Captain McDonald for code enforcement. Again, he's out at his son's baseball game, so that's why he's sitting in his truck. But Captain McDonald.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, District 4. For those who don't know me, I'm Captain Sean McDonald. I'm the Commander of Code Enforcement Division for the Corrections Department. Code Enforcement has been under the Corrections Department since November, so I'm a little over 3.5, close to 4 months of running Code Enforcement. Code Enforcement is broken into two different subdivisions, a residential enforcement and a commercial enforcement. Under the residential enforcement, we have 4 teams that work each commission district. And then we have in the commercial division, we have 1 team that works countywide. So I pulled stats from both residential and commercial from say January 1st to in our residential area, we have performed over in just District 4 alone, we have performed over 1,360 residential inspections. We have issued 566 notices of violations, which those are not citations. They're just a little orange card issuing violations saying you've got trash or illegally parked vehicles or whatever the case may be. We have issued through last ditch efforts 27 citations. One of the goals that I like to have at code enforcement is voluntary compliance. And out of the 566 NOVs pulled, we have only had to write 27 citations to magistrate court. We've pulled 598 signs out of the right of way. We've performed 3 residential blitzes just in District 4. Moving to the commercial side, in the commercial side, it's a little bit harder to divide up, but in the District 4 area, we've performed 239 commercial inspections, has only issued 39 notices of violations and 0 citations. So that's a good voluntary compliance
Everybody
rate
else
we're
loses
getting.
audio?
And pulled 110 signs out of the right of way. Did I lose you? We pulled 110 signs out of the right of way and performed 2 commercial blitzes in District 4 year to date. So we got a lot going on in code enforcement as our grass season gets busier. Grass season's gonna pick up. We'll be out more in force. We have a small crew that works on Saturdays right now to help with the street peddlers, vendors, removing them from the county. And at this point, anybody has any questions?
Any questions for code enforcement? Okay.
I just got one thing, Captain McDonald, can you kind of explain, I think there was a question earlier, the difference between commercial code enforcement and what we do in community development?
Okay, with commercial code enforcement, we enforce all the quality of life codes and the international property maintenance codes for commercial businesses. Community development enforcement side, they enforce business license, alcohol sales tax, and zoning issues. So there's two little different departments doing some sort of enforcement. If it's a business license issue, it's community development. If it's trash, grass, it's corrections.
Great. Thank you for that, Captain McDonald. Let's open up. Do we
Yes,
have
sir.
any questions from anyone about anything right now going forward? We've stayed over quite a bit usually than we do, but we want to make sure that we get everyone's question answered. But also too, before we go on there, I want to bring back COO Stanford and let him address a little bit on our quality of life and keep Clayton beautiful and what we're trying to do there.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll be very brief. I think Ms. Taylor was asking a question about what seems to be the appropriate next steps with the policy decision the board made with abolishment of KCCB. Ironically, we're slated to have a brainstorming session with Ward Nelson, Chief Roberts, Mr. Ejike slated for early part of, or middle of next week, actually, to talk about some additional alternatives that might emanate from the change within that space. So we should have some additional recommendations that we can make to the board after that meeting on Wednesday. The other question was in concert with other opportunities to potentially work with the cities. We have a April meeting where the city managers and my office, along with the C-suite from the county, get together to talk about ways that we can synergistically move a lot of agenda items for the county forward. ironically, Ms. Taylor, part of that meeting will be talking about quality of life and some things that we may be able to do in concert with the cities. One of the things we are looking to bring forth in April is an amnesty day, where we give an opportunity for the citizens to bring a lot of their larger white goods and some things that they want to shred. And so we're working with a vendor right now to set up several locations throughout the county to have that amnesty day sometime early part of the spring. So that's kind of where we are with our quality of life update and what might be some strategies we would implement with regard to the abolishment of KCCB.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford. Okay, we have any questions for Mr. Stanford or Chief Roberts, Ward Nelson, anyone about any issues that they're having or foreseeing? None? Whoa. Okay.
Well, Judy Taylor always has one more question. Of course, I have 20 more questions, but only on the last one. Does anybody like Ward Nelson or Captain McDonald have any news on our Tara Woods apartments that had the fire in there last Wednesday morning? And one of our entire front units, I believe, is no longer going to be able to be a unit, have to be redone. Any more information about what's going on in there and what might be going to happen, to further along our issues with that complex?
I believe Captain McDonald already left, but Ms. Taylor, we've talked several times about the fire, and right now it is, I'm not sure whether the fire department has completed their investigation on it. There is 2/3 of that building that were damaged. My understanding, there's still some people living in one portion of that. I don't know whether they're going to be relocated. Those that were burned out were sent to other housing by the Red Cross. And from this point on, we required that from that moment, we required that the owner fence around the property to protect it from anybody being able to access it. And they did that immediately. We are having a good working relationship with the owner of the property and addressing code enforcement issues. Cleaning up the trash, and they got the pool drained and covered. So they have been working with us. The portion about what they're going to do on remodeling comes under community development, because that's zoning issues and making sure that they're in compliance there. So there was a case that was, or there were several cases that were presented against the owner for those issues with doing the remodeling. That has been pushed off, my understanding, until April for that to be heard. But the owner is being very, very compliant with us, trying to get things fixed. There is a new property manager that's on site now, and we're starting to see some good progress out there. But as far as the actual building, my opinion is it's probably going to be at some point demolished. I don't see them rebuilding that, but we're a little ways from that happening yet because the insurance companies and everything else involved.
Great. Thank you, Ward Nelson, for that. Any other questions? Okay. All right, well, thank you all. I do want to give one update. We had gotten a question about the warehouse on Battle Creek and South Lake Parkway, and I just want to let folks know there is a potential client that perhaps might be coming there. They're working on that now. So that facility might be opening up soon. So I just want to keep you all aware of that. But if there are no more questions, our next town hall will be April the 10th. So we want to begin to spread the word to get folk out so that we can begin to get to capture what's on folks' mind. It's the only way to move this county forward. It's the only way for all of us to begin to operate in a spirit that is going to help us to excel with the quality of life and everything we want to do with operations and everything else. So again, thank you all for coming. We thank all our department heads for being here, Chief Roberts and everyone else. We thank you all for what you do and what you brought. And thank you, Judge Wright, for all you've done and what you're doing in this county. So thank you all for coming, and you all have a great and prosperous weekend.